Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks with an update on the current situation in Spain, day 233 of the current situation, and the pandemic seems to have taken a new twist with rioting and looting breaking out in various cities around the country, but more about that in just a minute. Firstly, a big thanks to all of the people that left comments on the last video. Lots of comments, lots of debate happening there as usual. A big thanks to all of the people that supported the channel through a small donation. You can see your names here. Thanks to people that bought merchandise, and a big thanks to my patrons on Patreon for your ongoing support. Now, as I just said, rioting has broken out in various cities around Spain, and it's starting to get a little bit ugly in some of those cities, as looting has also been taking place. We can see here that anti-lockdown protesters have turned on the police in Spain and Italy. Anger about coronavirus restrictions has turned to violence in Spain and Italy, where demonstrators battled police and looted shops in several cities. In Spain, the police clashed with protesters as violence flared in pockets after the reimposition of restrictions on movement and activity as a result of soaring infection rates. So violent clashes with police in various cities around Spain. We'll have a look here to see exactly where these riots are taking place, and we can see that in the cities of Logroño, Barcelona, Oviedo, Santander, Bilbao, Vitoria, Seville, Malaga, Granada, Murcia, Zaragoza, San Sebastián, Burgos, Ibiza, and more. From north to south, from left to right, from the great avenues to the periphery, shouts of freedom, but also barricades and cobblestones, in some cases looting. So a dangerous situation there in various cities all over the country. But according to this article here, the extensive police deployment last night has prevented a new night of protests over the curfew and restrictions. The most serious incidents have taken place in Leon, where several dozen hooded youths have staged different altercations in the centre of the city. After a Saturday night that resulted in almost 70 detainees, 33 of them in Madrid and 20 injured, 12 of them agents, the extensive police deployment, social condemnation, and the lack of call to action on social networks has prevented that this Sunday was the third night of riots due to the curfew and restrictions in our country. The most serious incidents this Sunday have taken place in Leon, where several dozen hooded young people have staged different altercations in the centre of the Leonese capital in protest to the curfew due to the pandemic that governs from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. throughout Castilla y Leon. So there we go, the most serious altercations that took place last night were in the city of Leon. Now I was in that particular city a few months ago, and it's a shame to see that they now find themselves in this situation. Now, with these riots breaking out around the country, the Prime Minister, Mr. Sanchez, has called for calm after violent anti-lockdown protests. Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, has called for an end to the violent and irrational behaviour of a minority of people after a weekend of angry demonstrations in cities around the country against the government's decision to declare a 6-month state of emergency in response to the coronavirus pandemic. So the Prime Minister there coming out and calling for calm and blaming the riots on a minority. Now exactly who is behind the riots? Is it an organised group? Is there a pattern in their behaviour? And we can see here in this headline the impossible robot portrait of the rioters, from neo-Nazis to anti-system protesters from working class neighbourhoods. It's difficult to profile the average participant in these protests. Vox accuses the extreme left of sabotaging the demonstrations of freelancers and workers, and Podemos points to Nazis and fascists as the ones responsible for the altercations. They were first linked to the official demonstrations from various labour sectors, and later the clashes were blamed on radical and minority groups, according to security forces. In the Basque Country, the attendees were branded as deniers, while in Madrid or Santander, the police have considered that the ultras football groups are those that have encouraged disorder. So as we can see, they're impossible to pinpoint exactly who is responsible for the riots. According to one political party, it's the extreme left. According to another political party, it's the extreme right. So nobody seems to know exactly who's behind the protests, but one thing is clear, that they've all come out of the woodwork at the same time. And as we saw in some cities, in particular Logroño, the rioting has turned to looting. And we can see here in this headline, this is how Logroño stores have dawned after the violent looting. Logroño has been the scene of multiple looting during the riots of the last hours, and the owners of some businesses have suffered the consequences of these acts of vandalism. It's never a good sign when rioting turns to looting, and my heart goes out to the shop owners there in Logroño who have suffered the consequences of these vandals. Now, as we just saw, the police are not really clear who these rioters are, but this headline here can give us a fairly good idea as to why these things are happening. The COVID pandemic has led Spain to the #1 position in Europe for youth unemployment, with a rate that doubles the average. The crisis has thrown this group of people, the weakest, out of the labour market, so the government needs to announce structural reforms. 40.45% of young people between the ages of 16 and 25 in our country are unemployed, according to the recent labour force survey corresponding to the third quarter of this year. This data, corroborated last Friday by Eurostat, the European Statistics Office, once again places Spain in first place in youth unemployment in the EU. So there we go, radical protests and rioting taking place around the country, and Spain now recording a youth unemployment rate of 40.45%. So if you're looking for answers as to why this rioting is taking place, that's a pretty good place to start. Now let's have a look at the health situation in Spain, starting with the country as a whole and then various autonomous communities. We can see here nationwide statistics. The risk level currently in the country is extreme. We can see the total amount of cases there. The accumulated incidence rate in the last 14 days nationwide is 485.28. In the last 7 days, 857 deaths have been recorded. And we can see here nationwide hospital pressure. There are currently 18,162 COVID patients in hospital, and there are 2,482 COVID patients currently in ICUs. Now let's have a look at some of the autonomous communities around the country, starting with Navarra. We can see there that the risk level is extreme. The 14-day accumulated incidence rate there is 1,187.53, 27 deaths in the last 7 days, 405 COVID patients currently hospitalized, and there are 56 patients in ICUs in Navarra, which means that 40.58% of ICUs are occupied by COVID patients. Catalonia now, risk level is also extreme, total amount of cases. The accumulated incidence rate in the last 14 days sits at 699.84, 13 deaths in the last 7 days, 4,045 COVID patients currently hospitalized, and there are 511 COVID patients in ICUs, which is 38.92% of all ICUs in Catalonia. The Valencian community at the moment, the risk level there is high. The accumulated incidence rate in the last 14 days is 231.47. There has been 45 deaths over the last 7 days in the Valencian community. There are currently 1,244 COVID patients hospitalized and 188 COVID patients in ICUs. Murcia now, the risk level is also high. We can see the accumulated incidence rate there sits at 503.51. 29 deaths in the last 7 days in that area of Spain. 517 COVID patients currently hospitalized, and there are 97 COVID patients in ICUs. And finally, Andalusia, we can see that the risk level down there is extreme. Accumulated incidence rate in the last 14 days, 444, 148 deaths in the last 7 days. There are 2,570 COVID patients currently in hospitals, and there are 345 COVID patients in ICUs in Andalusia. Now, there's lots of talk in the country at the moment about whether we are heading to a more severe confinement or another lockdown. We can see here from this headline here that Daniel López Acuña, a former director of the WHO, says that if we want to stop the curve in Spain, the best thing is to assume a confinement. The epidemiologist assures that the situation we have is particularly serious and believes that the best solution would be home confinement for 15 days to give a definitive blow to the evolution of the pandemic. So there we go, one expert there calling for a 15-day severe lockdown in order to get the situation under control. This headline here from La Vanguardia suggests the restrictions adopted 15 days ago in Catalonia are beginning to take effect. However, experts do not know if the measures adopted will be sufficient. And that's basically where we are at in the country at the moment. Nobody knows if the new restrictions are having any effect at all, whether the curfews, whether the perimeter confinements are improving the health situation. We're just going to have to wait a few more days, I imagine, to know the results. And if things don't get better, as we have seen, more serious lockdowns will come into effect. Now, as we know, the Canary Islands has the lowest incidence rate in the country at the moment. And of course, they are open for business. Tourists apparently have been flooding into the Canary Islands in recent times. We can see here that British, Germans and Swedes invade the Canary Islands because of their low incidence rate of COVID-19. So the Canary Islands there taking advantage of their low COVID rate and the fact that they don't have a curfew in place at the moment. And as we saw there, tourists invading the islands. Now, I recently saw that England has gone into another lockdown situation, so I don't know whether that is going to affect people's holiday plans in coming weeks or months. So we'll keep an eye on that. Now, let's have a look at some of the comments from recent videos. First one here from Tony. Hi Stuart, no COVID cases in Oz. Must be doing something right. Yeah, Tony, thanks for the comment. I wasn't aware that there were no cases in Australia. I thought that there were a few, not exactly sure how many, but I didn't think the number was zero. As we know, over the last 8 months or so, Australia has done a pretty good job trying to keep this virus out of the country. They had a bit of a problem down there in Victoria because the situation got out of control. Of course, the virus managed to get out into the community. And of course, the Premier of that state, Mr. Andrews, imposed lockdowns to get the situation under control. I think they've just recently opened up again. I think restaurants and pubs and a lot of other social activities have opened up again. So people seem to be happy about that down there. And other places around the country have also gone into a bubble-like situation in order to keep the virus out. Now, I don't know how long you can do that for. I know that Western Australia announced they're going to open their internal borders again to some states. Victoria, I don't think, are going to be allowed to go into WA just yet, but states like South Australia, for example, yes, maybe Queensland, but the international borders are going to remain closed. Now, I don't know how long you can do that for, and as we can see in Europe, the virus is out of control. In North America, the virus is out of control, but Australia at the moment, no, and I don't know how long that is going to be the case. But they have managed the situation fairly well, and hopefully they can continue to do so. One here from Jim. England also going into lockdown, supposedly for only a month. Weather cold and wet. Wish I was in Benidorm. Yeah, Jim, thanks for the comment. I bet you are not the only person in the United Kingdom that wishes they were in Benidorm at the moment. And I'm pretty sure that Benidorm wishes you were there too. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And as you said there, you've gone into another lockdown there in England for the next 4 weeks, although you seem a bit skeptical about whether it's going to be 4 weeks or longer. And the weather there cold and wet. If it makes you feel any better, it's also going to start raining here tomorrow as well. And I don't know how that lockdown in England is going to affect tourism in the Canary Islands. We saw before that there has been an influx of tourists from Britain in recent times. I don't know whether this new lockdown is going to throw a spanner in the works for many people. One here from Graham. I saw riots in Logroño tonight, looting a Lacoste shop and overturning bins full of bottles, then throwing them at the police. Looks like the unemployed youth have had enough. Yeah, Graham, thanks for the comment. You're right. Logroño has been the victim of looting and rioting in recent times, and the youth are being blamed for this. There have been some fairly bad images on the TV in recent times of people, as you said there, overturning these bottle containers and then throwing the bottles at the police, and then of course breaking shop windows and looting stores. And as we saw earlier in the video, unemployment here is a problem for young people. I think we saw it was 40.65%, so that's a very, very high number, and we shouldn't really be surprised that some people are fed up with the situation at the moment, especially with those unemployment figures. One here from John. Hey Stuart, a big thank you from an American living and working in El Puerto de Santa Maria. I've been watching your videos since March and find them very helpful and informative. We are screwed down pretty tight here once again, with all neighbouring towns being locked down. Keep the information flowing and don't let the toxic posters get you down. Your channel is vital. Yeah, John, thanks for the comment, and sorry to see that the screws are being tightened down there in Cádiz. Unfortunately, it's happening around the country at the moment, as we know. Not a lot of things that we can do with the curfews in place and also these mobility restrictions. Here in Madrid, apparently, the mobility restrictions are being lifted tomorrow. They were only in place for this long weekend, and I think next weekend as well, because it's also a long weekend in Madrid city. So people in Madrid are now free to travel around the country again, but unfortunately, everywhere's closed, so there's not many places that we can go to. And don't worry, the information is going to continue to flow. I'm not going to let the toxic comments get in the way of putting this information out, because as you said, a lot of people find the videos helpful and informative. So I'm going to continue. One here from Barry. It never ceases to amaze me, Stuart, that mistakes made in the comments tend to originate from native English language speakers. Borders versus borders and compare versus compare. Maybe you should extend your language score to include this additional category of student. Yeah, Barry, thanks for the comment and thanks for the suggestion. I'm sure that there is a business opportunity out there if somebody wants to open up a school to help people with their spelling. You're right, it is amazing how many spelling mistakes you can find in the comment section. I think one of the reasons is because people are writing comments on their phones with small keyboards. People don't really care if their spelling is good or not, which is also a worry in my opinion, because English is a language that needs to be spelt well, or at least that's what I was taught at school, and that's why we had all of those spelling competitions and spelling challenges when I was a kid. Am I the best speller in the world? No, but I do try to check everything that I write in order to limit the amount of mistakes I make. Because let's be honest, English is not an easy language to spell, but I think it's important that we try to spell as best we can. One here from Forever. Hey Stuart, thanks for your great work. I believe I have watched every single daily update video since the pandemic began. Special thanks that you started to incorporate more of a view on Barcelona, Catalonia into your updates. I think another watcher asked you for it and you picked it up. Expat living in Barcelona here. Very valuable. Keep going, stay safe, and many thanks. You're an integral part of my newsfeed to navigate this crisis. Yeah, Forever, thanks for the comment. You're right, somebody did pick me up on that. They said that I didn't talk much about Catalonia, that I didn't include Catalonia in my updates, and I have tried to rectify the situation and include more news about Catalonia. In fact, I've incorporated La Vanguardia newspaper as one of my main sources for the information. I've also had a few people accuse me of being anti-Catalan and saying that that is the reason why I don't include Catalonia very often in the updates. It wasn't because of that, it was just that there was so much information happening around the country that it's difficult to look at each individual situation. And as we know that when you live in Madrid, a lot of the news in this country is Madrid-centric. So I apologize to people not only in Catalonia but other parts of Spain that if you feel that I am neglecting your particular area, let me know and I'll try to include it more frequently, as long as it is a place where things happen and not a little village in the Pyrenees, because I can't get news about what's going on there. And finally, one from Valeria. I think you should do a live Q&A since so many people have questions. I think it would be fun. Keep up the great work and thank you. Saludos. Yeah, thanks for the comment. A few people have suggested that I do a Q&A, and in fact I am planning to do one soon. I've got to get things organized. I've got to get a camera set up which obviously can go into a live feed. I could do it with a webcam, but I don't think the quality would be very good, so I'm going to try to hook this camera up in order to get a live feed and then have a live Q&A session. But I'll let you know when that is going to take place, and I will try to answer some of the many questions that I imagine that people have. On that note, I'll start to wrap the video up. Questions and comments, please leave them in the section below. Debate the situation out as you normally do. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.